Greetings, wrestling fans. Welcome to another Superstar Scores edition of the Smarkoutmoment Smack Talk podcast. So with this time around, we're going to be doing Sting because he just retired, and we of course like to do these recaps with some fresh ideas in mind of somebody, their career retrospective and stuff. You don't know who we are. I'm Tony Mango. As always, my Robert Fleece.
All of my scores are based on fake Sting.
And Callum Wiggins.
He's a man called Sting.
I am anticipating some pretty high scores here today, and we will of course get to that, break down what all these things are, how it works. In case you are brand new to Superstar Scores, even though this is the 36th edition of this, so there's plenty to go back and check out. The most recent one being CM Punk. We've done very high scores in the past, like Undertaker, and we've done very low scores in the past, like Steve Blackman didn't end up doing all that well. Buff Bagwell is one of our lowest, and we've adjusted scores too over time. Every so often we'll go back and kind of have to tweak things based off of some awful thing that somebody's done, or they've had a career resurgence or something. So at this point, it seems like Sting is retired. It's his maybe third or fourth semi-retirement, but this one seems like it's truly done. So, we've got 10 categories to break down. We've got 100 points to disperse, and we'll tell you how all that works in a moment. But first things first, we want to know what your scores are throughout this. So while we're going along here, write down your scores. Let us know in the comment section below. If listening elsewhere, send a tweet or put something else out there on Facebook, or put something on the Discord that we have out there. Of course, you see a link on smarkoutmoment.com for that. If you are on YouTube, though, make sure you click on all the good little buttons that you see there. The like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell, the thanks button, the join button. All that stuff is really appreciated. Join button in particular gets you some access to the Patreon, patreon.com/smarkoutmoment, where you'll find the same exact tiers that you have on YouTube channel membership. Redbubble and T-Bubble is where you can get merchandise. Also, keep in mind that the next episode of the Darkcast is going to be coming up somewhat soon. I don't know what we're going to do necessarily, but got some ideas in the pipeline, so we might come around and do what more than likely we'll probably end up doing is an episode of Hall of Lame. So we'll have some anti-awards kind of, and talk about wrestling's past and kind of rag on that. But Superstar Scores Sting, we do have quite a bit to break down, and for anybody who is new to this, there are 10 categories, and those are broken up into some subcategories, kind of umbrella sections. So we have, first things first, the ring skills, which is athleticism and psychology. We've got the mic skills, charisma and character. We have appearance is physique and entrance. Behavior is backstage professionalism and public relations. And then the crowd reaction section is popularity and credibility. All of these are worth 10 points each, although we've kind of had the idea in the past that we could have negative scores. It's usually 0 to 10, but we don't have too many people that have been in the negatives. I think the only person that we might have given any negatives to might have been Alberto Del Rio at this point, although we might have even just not given him a negative yet. I know that I have a couple negatives in the pipeline for Chris Benoit and Vince McMahon for obvious reasons. Brock Lesnar might need to get some points deducted in a future thing for sure. That's not a thing I anticipated to go from my very high score of what did we give him? We had a combined average of 80.67, so that's going to go down a little bit. But Sting, I am anticipating some very high scores here, so let's break it down here, and we're going to start off with the two in-ring skills sections, which are, as I mentioned before, athleticism and psychology. The athleticism side of it is their ability to actually perform the maneuvers without botching stuff. It's also to assess their finisher, like their move set, if it's interesting. The psychology side of it is more of their storytelling, whether or not they can keep a long match interesting, whether or not they sell properly, or if they are just sort of unbelievable when it comes to their performance. Not in like an, oh my god, unbelievable, but in a, this is ridiculous, and you're, why are you running around like crazy when you've had your knee worked on the entire match or something. So, where are you guys going when it comes to athleticism and psychology? I'm actually going to do something I haven't done before. I'm going to do my numbers on the spot.
I'll go first. I gave him a 7 for both. I believe that there was a time where Sting was considered one of the more athletic competitors, like in the 80s or early 90s, but as time's gone on, he's really been more of a showman in the ring, and, a 7 is a great score. It's about, your median good score. He's not average, but he's not like a Shawn Michaels in the ring or anything. And psychology, I also give him a 7. I think he improved on that throughout his career. He really understood the Sting persona and the invincibility that could sometimes come with it by the end of his career, but he was never like, a perfect storyteller in the ring.
To cards on the table, that is where I was leaning, but Cal, you'll be able to sway me one way or another.
I'm a fairly certain outcome for 7 for athleticism and psychology. I think that Sting was he was a good athlete, but he was, a product of his time, where you would do just a lot more clotheslines and headlocks and just the basic stuff, but in that sort of time you had to also, because the movesets were a bit more limited, you had to tell a lot more kind of music between the notes, and so that's why I put him more psychology, because I think he has a level of psychology from being a product of that time that a lot of wrestlers today don't really possess, where they are brought up in a more move-centric atmosphere. He didn't need to do that. Like, he could get away with, I'm just going to do the Scorpion Death Drop and the Stinger Splash and the Scorpion Deathlock, and then that's basically it. That's basically my moveset, and I'm just going to do everything else in between that. But I'm going to make it feel like it's a epic match by being really good at selling, by no selling when it's the right time to no sell. And I think that's kind of the aura of Sting, comes from his above average psychology to make up for not average, but like just good. But he's good ring work, great storyteller. So
I am not super duper familiar with a lot of aspects of Sting, just from being more of a WWF guy that already cuts out the vast majority of his career, since if I judged him based off his WWE stuff, it wouldn't be high score because obviously he did like almost nothing there. But I had seen him in TNA here and there. Wasn't the biggest TNA fan, so I'm missing out on a lot of that information. WCW, Sting was one of my favorites during the tail end of that when I was watching it from like 96 to 99, and I've clearly gone back and watched some other things and stuff over the past, but couldn't tell you a damn thing about early WCW for him, and then his lead up to that. Like, I don't think I've seen a single match of him and Warrior tagging up, and the big setup of his career, the Flair angles and his time in the Horsemen, like, I don't think I've seen almost any of that. So from what I have seen, 7-7 was basically what I was going for. A lot of the same opinions that you guys brought up, where he wasn't really, a Rey Mysterio in his prime, flipping around like crazy or anything. Not that everybody needs to be, but he was capable from being able to be a solid wrestler, start to finish. And then on the psychology side, I think that the biggest strength was more on the character rather than necessarily being like, man, that story that he told in that match was just top notch. But I think 7's, how did you phrase it, Rob? It's like the median good average kind of thing. I think that's a good way.
It's like level 1 good.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And 6 is like you just barely got into the good range. 7 is like, no, you're good. And then 8's when you start getting into like, okay, now you're heading towards great on that.
I want to touch on something you said there, though, because you mentioned how you're not familiar with his time, WCW and his time in Horseman. That was like a 5-week angle to get him in and get him out so that they could do another match with Flair. And I think it's funny sometimes, if you year, like on paper, you're like, oh, Sting was one of the four. He was great, and that kind of stuff is always funny to me. But I feel, because I was trying to think about this, because I see a lot of debate on Twitter about, all right, now we got to talk about it. Now that both their careers are over, who's better, Taker or Sting? And they're so different to me.
Yeah.
Because with Sting, it's 100% an aura-based wrestler. Like, I don't watch any Sting match outside of maybe Flair at the Clash of Champions with the intention of, oh, I got to see this great match. I'm watching for the character and the charisma and the aura, which is why, for these, I gave Sting 2 9s. A 9 for charisma and a 9 for character, because he exudes so much of it right till the very end. And he's got one of the best characters of all time because it fits whatever era he was in perfectly. The Surfer Sting had the rad dude energy of like Bart Simpson or whatever the fuck from that era. And Crow Sting
Great
was
stuff. Instead of the woo, he's all just like the Don Cowman.
That's basically what he was outside of like when he wasn't doing the rig stuff. And Crow Sting was perfect. And the energy with those characters was so great. And I enjoyed Joker Sting. He even admitted the other day at the press conference that he wasn't really ever feeling DNA. But you know what? I think it's good for him, you know? Like, I always enjoyed Sting's character.
What did he say about the DNA thing?
Because he said that WCW was a perfect fit for him. TNA, he really never felt like it was. WWE, it definitely wasn't. And AEW ended up being a perfect way to end his career.
I mean, when it comes to charisma and character, charisma is the pure mic skills side of things. So you give him a 9 on that. Character is more of like the presentation and everything that goes along with that. Like we saw it on the Revolution show with his kids. Like there's multiple different variations of this. And when we were doing like The Undertaker and we're going character, obviously we weren't going back all the way to meet Mark Callis and trying to judge him based off of that. The same way that when we were judging Kane's character, we weren't really judging Isaac Yankem. But Sting is Sting. And he didn't change his name in that way where it's like, all right, we're supposed to pretend like this is a completely different type of person. Surfer Sting is very different from Crow Sting. And even Crow Sting is different from Wolfpack Sting. And then Joker Sting, of course, is basically a guy being like, man, I really like you. Let's just Joker. Let me try to do that a little bit. And Sting that we saw in AEW is more of like a subdued Crow Sting that just happens to talk more. So it's kind of an amalgamation of a lot of different ones. He never really got into like Surfer Sting all that much. But I'm very high on these two. I wouldn't go so far as to give him a 9 on both. But I'm leaning towards an 8 and a 9 maybe for 8 charisma, 9 character. Maybe an 8 and an 8. I might go down a notch for that, but I'm leaning 8 and 9. What about you, Tom?
8 and 9 is where I kind of sit at the moment as well. I think that he was a very charismatic guy, but again, a lot of his time from the 80s, guy just needs to go out and say, woo, I love being in this crowd, and I love this town, and you guys are great. And when he has to go, when he went a bit more subdued with the Crow Sting approach, he became a bit more limited in what he would say, a bit more cerebral when he did talk. But I think he never really, even when he was Crow Sting, he never really lost that kind of, that woo, yeah, here mentality a bit. So, but I think the reason why I've gone down to 8 rather than a 9, because there's obviously you have to add the proviso that everybody who wrestled in the 80s and 90s is a better promo than the people who wrestle in the 2010s and 2020s. They just are. They're just a product of that generation. And Sting's definitely part of that. But I think that he had a tendency to lose himself in the middle of a promo, would sometimes just go a bit too over the top, get a bit too emotional in the situation, and just to get what he was there to say. He was a guy that kind of worked on the moment, on the spur of the moment, and that sometimes meant that if you've got a point where you're meant to be going, you kind of get lost along the way. So I think that's why I kind of down for Chris for a little bit, just due to the fact that he was obviously incredibly charismatic, but a little bit incoherent from time to time. Whereas character work, I think that if he'd just been Surfer Sting his entire career, then it'd probably be like a 5. Because even though it's a cool character and it was a cool look and the face paint and everything about it, it's very one-dimensional.
It's very dated too.
Yeah, very dated. But then when you have the evolution of the Crow character, and then with the Wolfpack, which is kind of like a blend between both sides, where it's still the kind of Crow persona, but with a bit more of like a cool, like less edge to it. And then you move forward to stuff in TNA, where you got to just be a bit more. I think TNA and AEW kind of where we saw the most of the real Steve Borden just playing the character a little bit more. And so, yeah, Main Event Mafia stuff as well. Should really overlook that as well. That was an evolution of his character to being like, I'd say like his last real heel run, but he did have that awful heel run at the end of his TNA time where he was attacking Rob Van Dam for some reason and telling everyone, oh, Hulk Hogan and Bishop are bad, and that makes me a heel. And then it turns out Bishop and Hogan are bad, and so now you're baby facing. Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of Joker Sting. I think that he was a bit too over the top, but I can see why certain people are akin to it. And yeah, he's working AEW as this like impenetrable veteran, this invincible kind of aura about him. Really kind of carried his way through. So yeah, I think that he's had a very good evolution and subtle evolution of his character throughout the years. So I'd definitely give him a 9 for that.
Very high score so far. Switching over to the physique and entrance side of things for appearance, and they are pretty self-explanatory. I don't think anybody's going to get those mixed up and be like, well, for entrance, he's got some muscles, But physique, I mean, obviously now towards the later end of his career, he was wearing a t-shirt and stuff, but the guy's, fucking not 22 years old, so it makes perfect sense. But he still was in better shape than, way better shape than fucking I am, so it's like, I'm not going to rag him on that. And, back when he was, like, in his actual, like, prime of his career, Surfer Sting and all, like, dude had a great physique on him, and I think that's one of his higher scores when it comes to just, like, self-explanatory type of thing, too. I wouldn't go so far as to give a 10 on physique, but we could go probably an 8. How'd you guys go on that one?
I think I went with I've got an 8 for physique as well. I think he has the most out of this world physique. But it's quite funny that you look at because he was talking about on the post-revolution press conference about how he stopped taking steroids in 1990. And if you look at photos of Sting, yeah, if you have a look at the photos of Sting when he was doing that, he was in the Blade Runners, right? Yep. Yeah, with Ultimate Warrior, who didn't stop taking steroids in 1990. The Sting, yeah, it's a very, very distinct difference in the muscle bound freak that he was at that point in time. I say freak, in the positive sense. Obviously, it's not positive. You should be taking steroids. They can fuck your system up pretty badly if you're not taking them well. But yeah, but then he becomes a lot more lean, a lot more natural looking. Still obviously in great shape for most people, but still more lean, more believable, I guess. Really, not this cartoonish, over the top muscle bound guy. And I think that obviously as he aged naturally, that muscle definition is going to be harder to maintain and achieve. That's why he would be wrestling in a shirt in his time at AEW. I think he only wrestled once or twice in his traditional gear in AEW, but that's his prerogative to do. So he's not in the prime of his life. He's retired at the age of 64, so you're not going to have the unless you're not a freak of nature, but like if you are just taking steroids into your late 60s, into your mid-60s like Vince McMahon was, then yeah, you are going to try and potentially maintain that physique. But it's always been good. It's always been good to great, and so I think 8 is a good place for him to sit there.
I've got an 8 for as well. Largely a lot of things that you guys said. I just want to point out, the minute that he made those comments about steroids, I looked at photos and you just go, oh my god. Like, there's a huge difference from 88 when he's wrestling Flair to 90 when he beats Flair for the belt to like 91, 92 when he's fighting Cactus and Vader. He's completely slimmed down, and you can just see that, okay, yeah, this is a guy who is no longer doing it that way. And he always looked great. I mean, I remember in 06 when he briefly was wrestling without a shirt, like he beat Jeff Jarrett at Bound for Glory, and he was doing like the red face paint on the Crow attire, and that was really cool. And, you know, I really did wish he wouldn't have wrestled in a shirt in his last match, but then I saw him go through glass, and then I go, oh, that's why the shirt's on. Okay, got it. You know, but no, Sting's always looked phenomenal in his career, and he's the stereotypical professional wrestler.
So now, as far as entrance is concerned, of course, he's had multiple different entrances. We've had Man Called Sting, which is like glorious and how fucking awful it is. We've had pure awful in my mind when it comes to the Main Event Mafia theme. I hated that with a passion. That stupid bing, bing, bing thing I thought was just terrible. I don't know why they got past the pitch idea to begin with. And then we've got Crow Sting, and it's like, for Crow Sting alone, how do I not give him a 10?
Okay, I was a little worried because you were like, Main Event Mafia, Man Called Sting. No, I give him a 10 here. Okay, look, if we just take his original WCW entrance theme, that's like the really cool surf rock sound to it, to the absolute cheese that is Man Called Sting, and then we think about the Crow Sting, even without the dropping from the rafters.
Right.
And then you factor in the Seek and Destroy Metallica entrance after he stopped dropping from the rafters. His TNA theme, his theme, was always really cool and had a good aura to it. And then you have the snow. And he does like this, like Sting's entrance. And again, this is the word I'm going to keep using because it just fits. The aura that comes with Sting is a perfect 10. I give him a 10.
Yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of his WWE stuff in that, you know, the little, like they had the drummers and stuff compared to how they could have just...
Triple H come out with Terminator with Arnold Schwarzenegger narrating.
But it was like, the only reason why I didn't like it as much is because I knew that they had the Crow Sting thing and that they just didn't do it. And like, I like that better. But it still was pretty cool. Like, it's not like it was bad. And when you factor in things like the, just the song itself for the Crow Sting one in particular, I love the song. And then you've got the atmosphere, and you've got the voiceover, and you've got the coming down the rafters, and you've got the whole, it's not quite an entrance, but it still kind of counts when it comes to the character mixed in with that. But like, you know, like, hey, that's a person with a Sting mask on and it's Sting. Like, it's so stupid, and at the same time, it's so fucking great that like that's exactly the type of stupid thing in pro wrestling that I'm like, shut up, it's fucking cool. You know, that's where my suspension of disbelief gets kicked in 100%. So it's like that's 2 10s. I don't think we've had any 3 first yet, other than 9 for character. I think all 3 of us gave him 9 for that. Actually, did all of us give him an 8 for physique?
I think we did.
Yeah.
So you got 10 for entrance, Gal?
No, I'm going 9. It's Man Called Sting is the issue, and I put the lyrics up.
I was hoping you would read the lyrics.
He does this, he does that. It's just that's the first lyric. So he does this, he does that. He's as big as a bull and quick as a cat. He looks fine, he looks cool. He's his own man and he's nobody's fool unless you're Ric Flair and you just would like to leave him with him and just tell me. And this is the thing, he repeats this line in particular 3 times in the entire song, and it's just the complete antithesis of what Sting's character was. Don't double cross him or get in his way, because if you do, you're gonna have to pay. And everyone turned their back on Sting. Right,
but did they not have to pay?
It's like he's not like anybody else. If his friends are in need of him, he's there to help. And all the kids, they go wild, and all the old people start to act like a child. What the fuck?
See, is that not worthy of a 10?
All right, but again, I ask you. We're not all the old people in the crowd in the Greensboro Coliseum on Sunday acting like a child with a Man Called Sting.
The old people now, because now it's like, now we start becoming the old people. But the old people back with the early times, they're probably like, man, this guy's got face paint on. I don't know, he's not wearing loose black trunks and having a barrel-chested hairy appearance.
I'm not done with the lyrics from this song as well. Like, all over the world, he's such a smash. You know, it's only when he does the Sting Splash. Okay, fine. Then he loves his honey, but he loves The Rock, which was, I think, Ultimate Warrior's name, when it was like his character's name when they were the Blade Runner tag team. But then he says, but no one important loves the Scorpion Deathlock.
Okay, hold on. Whatever you're reading is just a bad interpretation.
It probably is.
Because the line is, he loves his honey because he likes the women. He loves to rock because again, he's a rad dude, Bart Simpson. But no opponent.
That's still bad.
It's better than no one important.
What do you mean now?
I kind of find it funny if it's not important.
That implies that like, you're probably a fucking loser.
Yeah. That song is just very, very corny. And you can also mention a couple of the other themes over the course of his career as well. I'm not a huge fan of his WWE one. And I like the Metallica one, but I don't have the same kind of affinity towards it. But when I think Metallica and wrestling things, I think in the Sandman. That just my mind just immediately goes to that. I don't think it's Sting's one. But I'm a big fan of the Crow theme from WCW, like his entrance at Starrcade '97 is epic. He would drop from the rafters. That was always cool as well. And then you have I like his AW one. It's not his best one all time. I'm a big fan of his TNA one. I think his TNA thing is really good. And I'm one of those people who's a fan of the Main Event Mafia thing as well. So I do like that side of it. So overall, his entrances are great, and he did do some really cool, had some cool pyrotechnics or lighting effects throughout his career as well. The snow, of course, from his AW stuff. I think the best entrance he had recently, outside of obviously the entrance leading into Revolution, was his entrance at Noah. Actually, in one of the KG Host final match, they had that 6-man tag with Darby Allin in Japan, and they just had like snow just coming across the screen, and like as he was walking down, it looked really, really good. So yeah, for the most part, he's had excellent entrances, but I cannot. I have to take at least a point off the Man Called Sting.
Now, Sting. If we're talking about music, obviously there's the Sting musician.
Yeah.
You know, they should have figured out some kind of a better crossover at some point. It's a little disappointed that they didn't, especially because the Sting's got some fucking great songs. I mean,
favorite song by the Police, go.
I don't know if I can actually name one off the top of my head, because I'm sure I know Police songs. I just don't know it's done by the Police.
Roxanne, Message in a Bottle, Every Breath You Take.
Every Breath You Take is a weird song.
I love that song.
But it's creepy.
Yeah, if you don't pay attention to the lyrics, it's such a great song.
I think they tend to make it great because it's Stalker.
He wanted to, but and to his credit, he always says, when people tell me that's their song, I'm like, you listen to the lyrics.
Random side note on that, one of my favorite songs of all time is from Phil Collins, In the Air Tonight, and he recently had said a thing where he was just like, yeah, it doesn't fucking mean anything. Like, everybody that has an idea.
I completely disagree with that. I refuse that. Like, that's a great song, and by the way, favorite Police song would be, for me, Message of Love.
I'm just going to look at some of the songs now. Probably go Those Dance Close to Me.
That's another good one, yeah. Shout out to some Sting music that people might not necessarily know. Everybody knows Desert Rose, love that song. Fields of Gold's a great one. Stolen Car is great. Two songs, though, that I think are in contention for my favorite song of all time, though. It's probably Me, a song that was created for Lethal Weapon 3, and Shape of My Heart, which should have been a fucking Bond theme. That thing is so perfect for being a Bond theme. So that's your random music discussion in the middle of Sting, but not last week we're going to talk about Sting. If we could have gotten Sting, the musician, do a version of Man Called Sting, I think that the world would implode or something. But that high scores on entrance, and I don't anticipate that we're going to have low scores on the next set, which is the behavior side of things. Backstage professionalism is the locker room side of it, you know, the politician negatives when it comes to people that are like, you know, that's not going to work for me, brother. Or are they like a Danielson who is like, yeah, I'll lose to everybody? Or are they in a Danielson like a bully? He's kind of 50-50 split on that sometimes. Public relations that's where you get into the negatives of like the Vince McMahon thing going on right now. What is their projection for the companies that they're working with? What do they do when it comes to charity work, talk shows, media coverage? Are they getting arrested? Are they somebody who is a great, John Cena with the Make-A-Wish type stuff? By all accounts, Sting seems to be one of those few people that fucking nobody has anything bad to say about. And I think the closest thing that I've heard that I can at least conjure up right in my brain of like a quote unquote negative was like, I think it was Nash recently had said like, Sting before he became, is he born again Christian? I think that's what he is. Like before he got more into religion, yeah, he used to drink more, but he was very responsible when he did. And it was like, wow, okay. That whole like, my party era, I would drink at the hotel that I was staying at, and I would be reasonable about it. Fucking loose cannon there. Like, seems like a respectable dude. Seems like he didn't politic his way and fuck people over and all. You guys might be able to enlighten me on some other things if there's something I'm unaware of, but I would assume that he's a solid like 9 on both.
That's exactly where I have him, a solid 9 for both. And apparently this guy is like as good as Terry Funk when it comes to just being a nice guy into his golden years in the industry. And everybody said he's the example of what to be. And shit, I haven't heard a single bad story, so I give him a 10 because I haven't heard anything like, and he fed all of the starving children in this place, but 9 is pretty damn close.
Yeah, I'm going 2 9s as well. I think that backstage he seems to be utterly respected by all his peers. I don't really see anybody say negative things about Sting. You can tell from what he said about his time in AEW as well that he was reluctant to win titles and to always win all the time. And Tony Khan always had to convince him, no, you're Sting, you're winning matches. And I think that he was selfless in that way as well. I don't think he ever really wanted to be obviously a big deal and popular, but I don't think that he ever wanted to do that at the expense of somebody else's push. In fairness, he probably was too selfless in that way because anybody that was told the finish to the 97 Starcade main event was, and if you're Sting in that position, it's like, yeah, can we not do that? Can Hogan shut the fuck up and take the pin for once, please? So yeah, I think this thing is incredibly well respected backstage. Open relations. Again, the only cut that you can really do from that is the fact that he was, for a time, addicted to drugs and alcohol and cheated on his wife and stuff during a like bad period in the 90s, but then became Christian. You know, it was all the good ones too. But that's kind of like the story for wrestlers: is you fuck around for a little while and then you find oh Jesus, and then it's all good and you move on.
Like it's like fucking Where's Waldo?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's like.
There you are, Jesus.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus, right there. Oh, I dropped the drugs, dropped the alcohol, I just like seeing them all over the page. Oh, Jesus is right there. I'll follow this guy.
Jesus Christ scared me.
But this is the story.
Now I'm picturing Jesus coming down from the rafters.
I mean,
Or it's like somebody's got a Sting mask, they take it off. It's Jesus. We need your body.
Imagine how different life would have been if this man had picked up that Where's Jesus book.
Yeah. Then maybe he would have teamed up with God instead of beating God.
But yeah, I'm glad that because, as everyone who knows, you're in the anti-organised religion. But if it works for you and it helps you turn your life around, then good for you. Just don't tell me about it. And but yeah, I mean, ever since then, he seems to have been completely clean, focused, just willing to get back and do good things. So he's not, as Rob says, can't give him a 10 because I don't know. I'm sure he does do charity work and other good stuff as well, but we don't hear much about it. Which maybe is even a sign of him being a good person because he doesn't brag about that stuff either. But I think that a solid 9 for both is really testament to the kind of man character he is.
Actually, kind of thinking about maybe giving him an 8 for public relations. Because the more that I'm thinking about it, the more I'm like, I don't remember him really doing too much media type stuff and too much other stuff. Like, not being an issue isn't quite as much of the same as being that. I'm looking at some of the other people that I've given some high scores to, and like, some other people, like a Foley is a 10. And I had given a 9 to, like Cody. Of course, at this point, Cody's fucking 10. I should probably change that. Yeah. He's gotten to the point where he's like, goddamn man, you're doing gender reveals and stuff like that. But, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'll keep it a 9. I'm looking at more.
I think Sting would be used to that kind of thing. I mean, he did it a lot during the 80s, being like a poster child for all this kind of stuff. I think he's just a bit more, I think he's kind of laid back. They don't really go after him as much because he's just pretty, especially in his late years, he's just a bit more like laid back, a little bit more just, I'm not going to cut like super intense, fiery promo in this interview. I'm just going to sit back and talk. And also, I don't know if this does technically count in public relations, but if you've seen that Sprite commercial he's in, then, he's a good spokesperson. He's a good spokesperson for a brand.
I mean, that counts as media type stuff, yeah.
Well, that's an awesome commercial.
I just thought of a great idea for a gender reveal. You hire Sting, and then whatever face paint color he's wearing is the boy or girl.
He takes off the mask, the white mask, and
you have him like come out in a white crow mask, and then reveal.
Yeah, blue for boy, pink for girl, and he's got a halo across it, and you're looking Jesus.
It'd be great. If Tyler came, where I would do something like that, I would pay Sting a stupid amount of money.
Here's the question, though, when it comes to media and like crossover type material and all. Is it a pro or is it a massive pro they worked with RoboCop?
Oh, that's a massive pro.
I might have to give him 100 for this.
He's just scores Robocop afterwards.
He should.
I mean, do we need to? Isn't he just a 10 and everything? Actually, now I'm thinking off the top of my head, I'm like, well, I mean, when it comes to FC, he's mostly just a head. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you go early in the movie, then his physique was all over the place in one part.
I'll tell you what, Robocop doesn't get a high score for athleticism. He can barely fucking walk. Some charisma, though. Goddamn, we're going to end up doing that at some point. Let's see here. We got those out of the way, so we're down to the final two categories, and those are popularity and credibility as part of the crowd reaction side of things. Popularity, more so pure popularity. They're fan support. In this era, we've got social media, so we're able to see, somebody like The Rock has way more followers than I don't know, Izzy Dame on NXT right now. Izzy Dame out of all the people for you to pick, I don't know why. Merch, sales type stuff, we don't really know too much, but we can get a general sense based off of how many people were wearing the Austin 316 shirt compared to some other things. And then the ratings, if we have any of that information, all that's linked to popularity. Credibility is when you get into their Hall of Fame type careers, their championship wins. Are they the type of person that very few people ever beat? Like, a 10 type of a score goes to a guy like Goldberg that lost maybe 8 people in his entire career. And then you got people on the very low end, like a Santino Marella, who was, he won some championships, but it was mostly as a joke, and could be humiliated on any given basis, and everybody would be like, yeah, that makes sense. So, very high scores on this one, too. Guy has won many, many championships over the course of his career over many different promotions. And I'm sure that if he were to have been in WWE for a decent amount of time, and not towards the very, very end of his career for just a hot minute, I'm sure we would have seen him win the WWE championship at some point. He would have most likely won maybe the United States title, Intercontinental, probably would have been in a tag team at some point to win that. You can't really compare the potential of WWE versus TNA, because TNA is an entirely different animal, but I mean, NWA World Television Champion, NWA World Heavyweight Champion, International World Heavyweight Champion twice, US Champion twice, World Heavyweight title in WCW 6 times, 3-time tag champ, Battle Bowl winner, European Cup, Ironman tournament, all these other tournaments and stuff. He won the TNA title 4 times, 5 if you count the NWA one, all across the board, and he ends his career as a tag team champion in AEW. I'd go 9 popularity, 10 for credibility, I think. Maybe 9 for credibility, now I'm thinking about it, actually. 9.
I give him 2 10s. Get the fuck over. He's working WWE. Okay. He had 2 pay-per-view matches. One of them was for the championship, and the other was the featured match at WrestleMania. Like, Sting is one of the most credible characters outside of WWE of all time. And popularity, it gets go wild. You old people act like a child. He's a 10. I think you should bump him up. What do you give him, Kel?
I'd go 2 9s as well.
Boo!
The only reason why my 10s for popularity are Steve Austin, Ric Flair, and CM Punk. And I just think Sting is just, he's very, very close. But I think he might just be like a little step below that. I think, at the time, like 97, Sting was the most over babyface in WCW during the hottest time of his entire run, and arguably one of the hottest runs that any wrestling promotion has ever had. So that can't be denied, and he was super popular in the 80s as well, and going into the 90s. I think that maybe the TNA stuff hampers it a little bit, because even though he was super over in TNA, I think that he was almost, I say overexposed, but a little bit over-relied upon in TNA. He wasn't a special attraction that he was in AEW or even in WWE. He was just there all the time, and just in front of the same people in the Impact Zone over and over and over again. So it's kind of hard to really gauge how over he was and what impact he was having in Impact in terms of like selling merch, like pushing pay-per-view buys, all that stuff, because it just felt like, I don't know, maybe at that point in time, he'd grown a little long in the tooth for Sting, but then his resurgence first with WWE and then coming back to AEW and having that awesome final run definitely has elevated him to, he's one of the most popular wrestlers of all time. I don't know whether he was at his peak, he ever hit the 10 mark. But his credibility, I give him a 9 just because it's not even a case of like not winning major titles in WWE. He's just won a lot of world championships, done a lot of great stuff, big moments, obviously ending it with AEW completely undefeated and finishing as a tag team champion. So it's hard not to say it's 10, but I give like loads and loads of people 10s for credibility. Maybe I could give Sting 1 as well, but I think that maybe it's also due to that little selflessness aspect to him as well, is that he would lose matches. And he wasn't like as, he might suffer in the same way The Rock kind of suffered with the fact that Rock was at his peak super, super, super over and would win loads of world titles and big championships, but then they'd also just occasionally one week having lose to Crowbar or something. And then just think, okay, that's just Sting lose to Crowbar on TV, or that big feud he had with Vampiro and loads of other guys that Sting shouldn't, in fairness, really be losing to, but he's going to lose to them because that's just, they asked him to, and he said, okay, sure, fine. I remember episode TNA where he lost to Rob Van Dam in 10 seconds. Like, that's just, Sting had his selflessness sometimes hurt his credibility a little bit, so that's why I dropped him down to 9.
You heard it here first, folks. Be more of a dick. Take it to be a prince.
I mean, you scoff, but that is kind of what you have to do to win. Look at the guys that have 10 credibility. Steve Austin, The Undertaker. I got an edge. Their edge won like 20 world titles, so it's kind of difficult not to. Like Goldberg, Jericho, Lesnar. It's like these guys, I say they're not dicks, but they basically said, "Hey, I should be the world champion. You know what? I shouldn't lose that title ever to anyone until it's the right time to lose to him. And I decide when I lose it, and then I should beat that guy when that's back. And that's just how it would go. Whereas Sting, it's just he's in the same way that like Bryan Danielson is. So like, he's almost as happy to lose a match than he is to win one. As long as everyone's having fun.
And all the old people are going wild.
Yeah, that's right. If Elvis isn't going wild because Sting isn't winning, then he'll win. If they're going wild either way, it doesn't matter.
So no score lower than a 7 for any of us on any of these, which of course, I mean, it's Sting. He wasn't going to get a fucking 2 in anything.
Say correctly.
It's Sting! Like I said, I'm just picturing now somebody being like commentating on, it's Jesus, like that. Like, he comes out to a total for me with 85.
I'm an 88.
I'm at 85 as well.
Which turns out his average is an 86, which is, let's see, it's 1 point above Rey Mysterio, and it is 3 points below Austin. It's 1 point below Kane, actually, funny enough.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, if we adjust Kane based off of the public relations side, I mean, I'm sure we're going to talk about a point maybe. But he's in that range of a lot of other greats, the Chris Jericho's, the Shawn Michaels. It's above Shawn Michaels, I think, on our average, yeah. He's above Foley. He's below Triple H right now. Above Now he's below Jericho, but he's above Daniel Bryan. Like, he's in that very high echelon. Still the highest score that we have overall is Undertaker at 90 point something or other, but 86 spread out over there. It's very, very, very hard to get into the 90s. And Undertaker would lose some points probably now if we adjusted too. He's talked more recently in the past couple of years.
I don't know if I dropped many points. This thing seems to maintain. I remember the good old days. That's basically the extent of his bullshit.
Like for me, I've got him. I think my 85 score puts him joint 7th for me. Like he's in the same points as me, both Rey Mysterio and Shawn Michaels. He's just 1 point off the Undertaker and Edge, and 1 point above Brock Lesnar, Cody Rhodes, and Ric Flair. Which both Ric Flair and Brock Lesnar might be adjusted later on because
Cody.
Cody for positive. Yeah, Cody goes up, Brock and Flair go down. It's always public relations and backstage stuff that always bugs people.
I'm gonna just on the fly. I'm looking at my Cody list right now. I gotta adjust his popularity and credibility. He was a 7 and an 8 when we did these before for me. Yeah, popularity's not 7 anymore. We want Cody fuck the Rock,
Yeah, I'd say I put him at the moment like Cody a solid 9. I still don't think he's 10.
Oh yeah,
just yet.
No, I do 9 for popularity.
I think by the end of his career he'll be 10.
Could be.
Right now, I think it's we'll have to see. I mean, Cody's doing great business right now. We'll have to see whether him as the top babyface will be the catalyst for even more. But yeah, Cody's definitely higher up than he used to be.
I already had him at 9 because I'm typically nicer to these people. And I don't remember when we did that. I could have done that post his AEW run.
I think that's when we did it.
Because that's when I started to see it. But I bumped him up to a 9 for credibility as well. Because he's the guy now.
Yeah, I just bumped him up in a couple different categories because I bumped him up for entrance as well. Now that Kingdom is what it is, he's currently now sitting at an 84 for me. Cody's got some major positives in that front, and if he wins that title, his credibility is going to go up an extra point for me too. Because holy shit, if you win the main event of WrestleMania and you pin Roman Reigns and win that and stuff, I think that you deserve to be a 9 and 70. But
Nothing won't happen, but I think he should win both main events and just really smash this fucker over.
Definitely not happening. Yeah, so Hall of Famer Sting and a Hall of Fame type level average score that we've got going on here. Very, very high up. I doubt that we are going to be shifting too much of his points over time, but who knows? Maybe he does more. Yeah, like I can only imagine that he would do maybe more public relations type stuff where we go, I see him with 10. But I don't think that we're suddenly going to get some kind of horrible news that Sting did anything bad that we need to punish him for, or go back and undo anything else. But that's it's a very high score, and it is very well earned. Sting, of course, total legend. You might even call him an icon. That's some kind of extinct bird. That's one of my favorite fucking things that Macho Man's ever said. I don't even know what it is.
Bird?
That's some kind of bird is not around anymore. I never did Macho Man's Super Squares, did we? Man, he's a fucking character. Yeah, so of course, let us know what your scores are for Sting in the comments, or go to the page on smarkoutmoment.com. Leave your breakdown there. Did you give him around the range, the 85, 88 type range that we gave him? Are you a little higher? Are you a little lower? I feel like Greg might, for instance, be on the higher end, and Greg's been super duper like Sting's my guy. I have to ask him what he has going on. But yeah, anything you agree or disagree with, of course, leave those comments below as well. And also let us know who you want us to do Super Scores for next, because not only do we need to kind of keep around this, we usually tend to do these when something happens where somebody like retires or something. But we've done some other ones in the past where they haven't just retired. Maybe they are well retired years ago, or we can go back in time and do like Superstar scores like Mr. Perfect or something. Or we might even we've done a couple in the past where it's been like a current person and we've done their scores, like Roman Reigns back in February 2015 is when we did that. Goddamn, Roman's changed a lot over the years, and we've got some very classic ones. Like we still haven't done an official one for The Rock, John Cena, Hulk Hogan. Of course, we got the Chris Benoit one that we can always do. We got I've done my scores for Trish Stratus and for Lacey Evans. I did some other ones here and there. And if you want to request something as well, you also have the Pick Your Poison tier. So if your favorite has been lingering out there, you really want to know what we rank them, let us know. We'll do that. We haven't done any tag team ones. That'd be an interesting one to do.
That's not your favorite police song as well.
Yeah. What's your favorite song from Sting? What's your favorite appearance from Sting in anything? Is it The Simpsons? And keep clicking on all those good buttons we mentioned to you before. Also check out things like fanboysanonymous.com. Not much music stuff over there. Pretty much all on the movie side of things, but some video game stuff, some TV stuff. It's if you're gonna find anything music related, that's where you would find it for the most part. Head over to fanboysanonymous.com for that. Also stay tuned for something coming up later on this week where there's gonna be another fan tracks for a John Cena film that's coming out, Ricky Stenicki. So that's gonna be Wednesday. I think it's when it's released, sometime Wednesday or Thursday. I'm assuming that we'll probably knock that out. So that would be
Thursday night or Friday morning. You wake up, you listen to us watch John Cena like we normally do in the middle of the night.
Yeah, some kind of 1 in the morning watch of a comedy with that. Hopefully better than Vacation Friends too. That was disappointing. But that is happening over at Blu-ray in there. And of course, if you click on the link tree, go to amangotree.com, you'll see links to all the Fanboys Anonymous stuff, all the Smarkoutmoment stuff, and anything else that's happening on there. You want to follow the most recent movies that I've been watching. All the I've been trying to watch as many garbage films as I can over the weekends and stuff. I think the most recent one that I had watched was actually now blanking on that. I know I had watched Blade recently. That wasn't the most recent one because that was one of those things that I was like, oh man, why haven't I not watched Blade?
I watched Iron Claw.
That's a good one though.
Look, I got news for you. As sad as the real story is, they took it and they made it even more sad. That's some sad shit, man.
All of Us Strangers was the most recent movie that I had seen, and then before that it was Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li.
Is that the live action one?
That's Kristen Kruk. Yeah.
Why are you doing that to yourself?
Because it was fucking glorious. It was so bad. And Sudden Death, the hockey movie with Van Damme. So yeah, go to the letterbox, check that out, and all that stuff. Follow me at Tony Mango all over the place, and you can see all sorts of things I'm working on. But also follow Robin Gallon.
Yeah, follow me over at Dudesleece. Follow my work at Fightful.com. Dudesleece.com. I'm currently staring at the back end of it. It's not quite finished yet, but the team working on it is closer than ever, and it'll be there soon. And I have some fun ideas for lots of things that one day you're just going to see a flood of content from me, and you'll know. And you guys are probably the first to hear it because Smarkoutmoment is the first home. So there's that.
Is it rude to stare at something's back end for that long?
Not when it's your own.
How dare you?
It's a little awkward, but not rude.
So you can find me on Twitter at weeknight14. You can check out the power rankings over on smarkoutmoment.com, my weekly contributions to the website where I rank WWE superstars based on their previous week's performances. And while you're there, you can also head to check out the Fantasy League, also www.fantasyleague.com, see how all of our teams are doing, who's picking up points as we are now in the final stretch towards WrestleMania. So every point matters just that little bit more because that will determine who is the overall winner at the end of this year.
Okie dokie, everybody. That means that we have our main event covered for this week, but that's not the last you're going to be hearing from us, of course, because we do have another round of the hot tags coming up. That's going to be covering things like Santana being gone from AEW, and we got, of course, talk about Paul Heyman going to Hall of Fame. It's going to be an interesting discussion for that alone. Whatever else happens in the next few days, we'll be covering that on most likely either Thursday or Friday, depending on what's going on. But meantime, click around, stay tuned, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we will see you with the next thing. Adios for now, everybody. This has been another Smart Out Moment, and we are being counted out.
When you're in the thick of a project, Harbor Freight is the place that always comes in handy. Whether you're picking up something for your pickup truck or a power tool for your project, at Harbor Freight, your dollar always goes further. And these days, when everything seems to cost more, you can take pride in knowing that you get hard-working tools at hard-working prices. Whatever you do it for less at Harbor Freight.
What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another edition of Superstar Scores here from the Smarkoutmoment Smack Talk podcast. I'm Tony Mango, your host as always, joined as always by Robert Felice.
Hello.
And Callum Wiggins.
Do we have your attention now?
Tell me when we're telling lies with these scores. We are going to be doing something that is a regular on this podcast recently, talking about CM Punk. He's had a lot of stuff revolving around him in recent months, and most recently, of course, he was released from his contract in AEW, and when people get fired, or if they retire, or if they pass away, or if they are particularly really big in the scene, and we haven't done a Superstar Scores for them yet, it's really a good time to look back on their career and kind of assess the damage, so to speak. And Punk is somebody that we could have done a while ago, back before he made his return to wrestling, and I'm sure his score would have been positive more in some ways and more negative in some other ways if we had done this at different eras, but nevertheless, we're doing it now, September 6th, and with the firing from AEW fresh in our minds, who knows if the scores get adjusted in the future with something pro or con. But what we are doing is the normal setup here. If you are not familiar with Superstar Scores and you've not checked out the previous 34 or so editions that we've done, what we do is we rank whoever the particular superstar is we were talking about on a 0 to 10 scale in 10 different categories. Each one of those categories is broken up where it's a group of two as like an umbrella category type of thing. So we'll explain how those work as we go along, and we also want to know what your scores are. So while we go ahead and we give our scores, tell us what you ended up giving him in your comments below on YouTube. If you are over there on YouTube, make sure that you click on the like button, double check that you are subscribed to the channel. If you want to toss a little spare change our way, you got the little thanks button. You also have the join button, which will give you access to the subscription service there on the YouTube channel membership side. $1 a month is great, $5 a month even better, $10 a month you get access to the Darkcasts. If you want to make sure that we do some kind of particular thing, like you really miss out on the mock drafts, we haven't done them in a while, then you can sponsor that through a Pick Your Poison donation. And obviously, if you're listening to us outside of YouTube, there are the Patreon options that are exactly the same over on there. So if you go to patreon.com/smarkoutmoment, then you can sponsor something like another Superstar Scores. We've got so many different people that are really high up in the like Mount Rushmore type category that we haven't gotten around to doing yet. Like John Cena was an option that we could have done this week, or we haven't done The Rock. We haven't done people on the negative side of things as well. People have asked us before to do Superstar Scores Chris Benoit just to see what we would get for him, or people that were obviously not as controversial, but they just weren't all that great in the ring, like Superstar Scores Mantar maybe or something. There are so many different options for different features and everything, and if you can birth something brand new, you can also do that too. I don't really want to see the footage of that, but at the same time, it's always an option to pick your poison in whatever fashion it is. So if you want to help out on that end, that's an option. You've got Redbubble and TeePublic for the merchandise. If you want to pick up a t-shirt or something, but just listening to this and giving us those comments is another great way to help out, and it doesn't cost you a dime. So as we go along here, we are going to try to be as objective as possible when it comes to these scores. We always are. Obviously we have our preferences and we have our fandom that can come into factor for things like just giving a little bit of a boost if we're a big fan of them, where we can kind of be like, oh, I don't really see what's so great about this or something. But I think we're relatively fair when we do these, and then we also debate and we kind of influence each other one way or another. Sometimes we can bump each other's scores up by a considerable margin. Sometimes it's hey, you forgot about this big thing that's a problem, and then I got to dock a couple points. So we do have 0 to 10 on 10 categories. 100 is the best possible score, and we haven't got anybody that had been particularly close to that range, although we've had people in that 90 type range. And I believe that Undertaker is still our overall highest score for our combined average at like 90 point something or other. 90.67 is currently the Undertaker. So a couple 89 types, a lot of people in that 60s, 70s, 80s range. Obviously some lower scores for the Steve Blackmans and the Buff Bagwells and stuff that are out there. So let's get into it and start talking about the specifics of the categories. The first two that we have are athleticism and psychology. Now, these are lumped together for the in-ring skills, and they're pretty self-explanatory, but obviously to break it down even more, athleticism are all the attributes that have to deal with them botching or performing a wide variety of moves. Do you like their finisher? Do you think that they are just, tripping over their feet, or are they very capable in the ring like that? Psychology is the storytelling aspect of that. Can they keep in match interesting going for a while and keep you hooked and really want to see that hot tag in a tag team match, or can they sell an injury really well? Like, Bret Hart is always one of my top people that I rank as far as psychology in the ring, for instance. Let's go first. What do you give him for athleticism and psychology? Where's Phil going?
I'll go first. I give him an 8 across the board.
As did I, actually.
He's a very, athletic competitor. I think people get confused. A lot of times with CM Punk, they think he did a lot of flippy-dippy kind of moves, and he's actually just a solid technical wrestler that can throw in a nice springboard when need be. And I think he helped really bridge the gap from the Triple H at Shawn Michaels era to the more spot-based stuff we see today. And I've always thought he was very solid in the ring. Psychology, I gave him an 8. I could have gone higher, but we have an 8. I think he's one of the few wrestlers who really understands psychology very well in today's day and age. I think anytime he, cuts promo or does a match, it was very story-focused, and I really enjoyed this aspect of CM Punk. And it was something that I thought he was really helping to bring to AEW.
I went with a 8 and a 9, so an 8 for athleticism and 9 for psychology. I went for an 8 because I think that he mirrors a lot of the other people I've given an 8 for athleticism too, and he had quite a reasonably diverse in-ring style, but he had like the high running knees and springboard clotheslines and obviously GTS. And he had a conduct by submission and was able to mix things up as well, especially when he got to AEW and got to be a bit more free in what he would do as opposed to what he was doing WWE was pretty much the same thing over and over again. But when he went to AEW and obviously Ring of Honor, he put the Pepsi plunge back, and that's a really cool move. So I think he drops down a little bit because he is prone to, I don't say prone to botching, but he does botch occasionally, and I think in the heat of the match he does tend to like slip up a little bit, and like I think in a way it makes the match more realistic because he's not just a very choreographed wrestler, he's not the most coordinated wrestler in the world, but he knows what to do, he knows where to be in the right moments. I give him 9 psychology because I think wherever he lacks in a little bit of coordination athletically, he more than makes up for in his ability to tell a story in a match. And beyond the fact of just being having a very like old school mentality, which helps distinguish him from others that have wrestled recently, he's also very good at transitioning a match based on the crowd reaction. So he'll go in kind of knowing that he's supposed to be the quote unquote face or heel, and then he'll hear what the crowd is saying or doing, and then he'll just pivot the match based on that, or he'll pivot the way that he behaves in accordance with that. So I think that's something that not many wrestlers today know how to do or trained how to do because they are very much taught to be this is the spot and moving on to this spot straight after, and it's very very like wrestling punk is the guys let's go out, let's feel what the audience is feeling, and then we'll pivot around that. So I think in that regard, his psychology should go up, went up a little bit higher for me.
So I went with the double 8s for a lot of the same reasons that you guys are saying. Like Punk is not going around flipping like a Rey Mysterio in his prime type, but at the same time that's not his style, and not everybody has the same style. He did do some moves that were not as standard as a body slam and a leg drop and whatever, but he was able to pull it off for the most part up until he got all the ring rust. And I haven't been the biggest fan of his in-ring work from AEW as much as a lot of other people are. I think that he's botched a lot more than even some people are willing to give credit towards and ding him for a little bit. But he at least is somebody that I can depend on, that he should be able to get a good match out of almost anybody. So not a 9 or a 10 on me, but an 8 is practically as good as you can get for the most part. There's 8 spots lower than that. So he's off to a pretty good start with this, and I'm going to continue that a little bit more with the charisma and character side of it on the mic work, which the clarification of that for anybody that's confused about why they're 2 things for mic work. Charisma is their ability to cut the promo without stuttering and just to be entertaining in that aspect of just flat out speaking the words. And the character side of it is their gimmick and their heel and face dynamics and their projection of who they are or who they're trying to portray as this pro wrestling character. I gave him a 10 for charisma, and I gave him a 7 for character, and it sounds like that's a big gap between them, but really CM Punk's character is Guy. He doesn't have one of the more outlandish things. Like I've given 10s to Undertaker and Kane, and I gave a 9 to Bray Wyatt, and I gave a 9 to I gave a 10 to Mick Foley for his characters. And Punk is pretty much just a guy. I do really like some of the character work that he's done with like the Straight Edge Society, but then once that kind of got diminished a little bit, then he was just a guy that complained. So I tossed around the 8 for a little bit, decided on the 7. But for charisma on the mic, he's a great talker. He's one of those guys that just knows what he's doing, doesn't tend to stumble around his words all that much, cuts great promos when he's got the time to do a pipe bomb or to really sink his teeth into something. So you can't get much better when it comes to CM Punk on the mic.
I also gave him a 10 for charisma, for everything that you just said. And really, I think, and not to steal his phrase, I guess it's appropriate, tell me when I'm telling lies, is he not one of the last wrestlers who can just talk fans to a building? I mean, it obviously didn't go the way we all thought it might, but he said counterfeit bucks, and the internet exploded. You know what I mean? Like, they could have never touched and done an amazing match with that. I think largely the stuff he did with Joe was all promo-based, the stuff he did with Max, like, he really was talking fans into the building in AEW, and of course, he was one of the few who could legitimately talk at a time where WWE was really 90% robots, created and developmental. So I give him 10. And for character, I give him an 8. I understand everything you're saying, Tony, but I also think he has created such a force with the CM Punk persona that, like, there's a lot of hero worship around CM Punk because of how he carries himself, because of the arrogant yet helpful yet, pissy character that he portrayed, which might just be him, who knows? But either way, it definitely captivated an audience, and he's going to lead to the fans, so I give him an 8. 10 for charisma. Of course, Punk gets 10 for charisma. He is one of the most charismatic wrestlers of all time. He has a cult following, primarily in Chicago, but pretty much everywhere in the world. You have people that like fall at this man's feet because of the words that he says. Like his pure power is on the microphone. And yeah, he speaks real, and he speaks in a way that isn't robotic or overdramatic or like that hype man approach that people like. That's like there's no wrong with it, like a Hogan Warrior would do. He is very more methodical in his approach, but just the way that he speaks is very, very captivating. He has kind of a Charles Manson quality to him. I think it gives him a little bit more gravitas towards people and helps them influence. And that's why, even when all shit's going down, there's going to be people that will say that he never did anything wrong. And that's the kind of character that he is. Are you saying they drink the Kool-Aid?
Oh, yeah.
You've just been transferred for the 4th time.
I love meeting new people. It says your package has arrived, but you can't find it. Ooh, a mystery.
You've now been on hold for 45 minutes.
Jamming to royalty-free music, baby. I have an apple or a banana. Thank God I had toilet paper. And if I hadn't lost that job, I would have never started hula dancing. Incredible. She doesn't break.
So we've used Kristen Bell to train our customer service AI.
We're creating a nicer world with the nicest human on Earth.
No, you are.
No, you are.
No, you are.
Help fuel your study session. Get 17 grams of protein with Tyson lightly breaded chicken bites.
I'd say so. I give him a 9 for character because I think that even though in more recent times his character has been who he is, and whether you like it or not, is very captivating. But I think that what's interesting in his character is that because he is so true to himself, he transitions from heel to babyface, back to heel, back to babyface. So fluidly based on who he's facing and what the situation is. And his character was always a character that and has always been able to do it. But then if we're judging him for his entire career, you got straight to Society Punk. It was really like an excellent heel character, and the way that aspect of his character, and the way that he transitioned it from early on in his career being like this babyface thing, saying like, I'm just straight edge, and the only thing that fuels me is being the only drug I need is being inside a wrestling ring. He's also then transitioned it to when you face a guy like Jeff Hardy and say, I'm straight edge, and that means I'm better than you. And the way that you poison your body means that I'm like virtuous and people should be following me instead. And then he goes into his best in the world phase after that ill fate spell with the Nexus, and then the best world thing. Again, it starts off as a babyface thing, like people know how good he is and how good he talks and how good he is in the ring, and so they want to see that change. And then he transitions into being the heel character under Paul Heyman of being I'm the best in the world, and now I'm going to start acting like him, start picking on your favourites, start calling out The Rock, and start calling out John Cena and all this stuff. So I think that he has evolved as a character throughout his entire career, and while still always maintaining an element of truth to himself, and nothing has ever deviated too far from who he is as a person, which I think is arguably as admirable and more admirable than a guy like The Undertaker, who made a gimmick which probably never ever should have worked and made it work really well because he was just so good at it and evolved with it and changed with it. But he's a fucking zombie. He's a rock zombie. He's not real, whereas CM Punk is real but has changed his character in accordance with different aspects of his reality.
Fair enough. I'm going to bump him up next to your point. You guys are making good arguments for that. So
I'll do that as well, Krista. I'll bump him up to a 9 on my end.
So he's, again, doing pretty well. I'm sure a lot of people would have assumed this was going to be the Crap on CM Punk podcast, which isn't, we're not coming out here with like an agenda. But
You think that this is Crap on CM Punk podcast? I've never listened to it speak. I don't know.
well, the next set of categories are the appearance side of it, physique and entrance. Pretty self-explanatory overall, but sometimes people forget that like entrance includes even the pyro. It's the full package of whether or not you like the music, or if that works with their character. What do they do when they're going into the ring? Are they just the type of person that walks to the ring and that's it, or do they do something fun with the crowd? Or does it make you just go like as immediately you hear the glass breaks for Steve Austin and that's a huge pop already? Or is it something where you're like, who the hell's coming out? It's this person? Okay, well, wait a minute. Then I'll look at my screen. And physique is just their body. It's part of the process. You gotta look the part. So Punk has never had the most muscular or most intimidating physique or anything, and for Triple H to be able to cut a promo and call him skinny fat and all, I give him a 7, but I give him an 8 for the entrance. I'm potentially going to move that up to a 9. I'm not going to give him a 10, I know that, but I'm debating about the 8 and a 9 for that because the song, Cold Personality is great, the clobbering time thing's fun, he does play up to the crowd when he's doing that stuff, but I'm not quite sure I want to give him a 9 for that yet. And physique is just, pretty self-explanatory on that end.
So I'll go next. I actually give him 2 7s. I give him a 7 for physique because he's, got a great physique for his shape, but it's not John Cena, he's not Ultimate Warrior, but he looks really good for his frame. I also appreciate that he was never afraid to change his look. He was never afraid to grow his hair out or shave it all off, depending on the type of character he wanted to present. I think he even said he had started slicking his hair back after his hair grew in because he wanted to be presented like a douchebag bad guy lawyer, which is funnier in hindsight than it was when he said it. I'm a big fan of. Look, I only give him a 7 for entrance because I love the entrance, but it's still rather standard, minus the occasional stage dive.
Sometimes it's a problem, though.
I think Cold Personality is a great song, but at the end of the day, it's still to CM Punk. And after he does the It's Clobbering Time, there isn't much for the entrance, but you can't deny just hearing the opening of that song and we're, on their feet. So he does still have a great entrance.
I'm giving him a 7 for physique because I originally gave him a 6 because I don't think Punk's ever had particularly incredible physique. He's got just a pretty normal body type, obviously more muscular than most people, but still nothing in comparison to a lot of people he was working with, especially in WWE. But then I remembered that, and it's good to be crass for a second, I'm pretty sure he's got it on with pretty much half the women's locker room in WWE.
He notoriously slept around quite a bit, yeah. He checked a lot of boxes.
So clearly maybe I'm not the right audience to be asking about whether he has a good physique or not, because clearly, again, it's part of the charisma as well, it's part of the charm. He clearly has a lot of confidence in himself and his capabilities, and obviously he's settled down now. But yeah, there was a time where pretty much everyone was getting a piece of CM Punk, so he clearly has some sort of a swagger about him in that regard. I give him 9 for the entrance. I think it's Cold Personality is such a great song for him, and it really fits his, that cult leader mentality that he has, and that's a charisma that he presents, and the way that he's timed it all out and everything, the drop to the knees, checking the watch, the clobbering time, the posing for the crowd on top of the corner, the way that he just holds them on the palm hand, and then you just have to remember the 2 biggest entrances in his career to Money in the Bank 2011, and that was still under This Fire Burns, actually, which again is another great song. And just coming out to that, and then the crowd reaction he got there, and then the first dance of him coming on that second episode of Rampage and jumping into the crowd and all that celebration. And I just think that he's a master of holding the crowd in his hand, and in many ways that's the best part of an entrance, when the crowd is super engaged with anything you're doing. So even though it's not like spectacular, he's never needed big pyro or anything along those lines, but yeah, as soon as he comes out, the crowd is paying attention from that moment on.
I don't remember another instance that we've been talking about the physique that we brought up, the amount of people that somebody's slept with backstage, but that might end up being something we have to factor into the future and be like, that's good enough for that.
I just want to give it, Punk doesn't, again, it's just a mindset, Punk doesn't strike me as a particularly straight up attractive guy. He's fine. It's just there's that, he hasn't got that natural,
he's not the conventionally hunkish type or something, yeah.
Exactly. And I know that there are a lot of people that like that more, I guess, alternative thing. I think it's just based that he has a ton of confidence in himself and can basically say, yeah, I'm I don't need to, absolutely get shredded and anything like that. I know that I'm, hot in his own way, and it clearly worked for him. So, as I say, we only hear about the wrestling side of things. I'm sure he got plenty more outside of the people that he's working with as well at that time. So yeah. But it's interesting because I don't think we really talk about too many people that have had that kind of batting average, should we say.
There's definitely something to be said for self-confidence.
Outside of Ric Flair, obviously.
Okay. Punk is not lacking in self-confidence. And speaking to just people I know, Bill Brooks does attract quite a few swoons as soon as he's in front of the camera. So definitely worth.
It's like Jeff Hardy has that kind of appeal too. As well.
Yeah.
There are certain guys that have that, and Jeff Hardy never had an absolutely incredible physique to him, but I think it's just that maybe it's the hair, maybe it's the hair as well.
Well, see, but Punk goes against that because Punk can shave his hair and people are still right there, so it really does.
I'm pretty sure not many people were interested in him when he had the man jobs. Rather than
well, people like Wolverine.
That's very much the physique thing. I think.
Well, Wolverine's got that gruffness to him. Yeah, people like Bad Boy.
Love seeing Punk then.
People like Bad Boy to an extent, but Jean Grey goes home to Scott at the end of the day. They want to bang the bad boy, but they want to go home to the nice one.
Even Lois Lane at a few nights at Wayne Manor, but
For people that are like, you're getting into this, man, you're going to have some interesting reactions to that Marvel versus DC Survivor Series thing. Trust me. But here's the star of the Superstar Scores edition for this one: the behavior side of it, backstage professionalism, or lack thereof for certain people, and public relations. So the backstage professionalism is focusing on the locker room and their ability to work within the company as a coworker of the other guys and the other girls that are there, and the problems that can come up with politicking or putting people over if you're the type of person who never has a problem losing a match or is helping people out in the ring. There's a thing that I just came across earlier today about Zelina Vega saying that Bray Wyatt had gone out of his way to really hype her up during her tryout match, and that ended up being one of the main reasons that she ended up getting the job originally from WWE was him specifically being like, let's go Thea, let's get a chant going and all. That's a real positive for backstage professionalism. The people that do things like, it's not working for me, brother, that's more of the negatives. And then on the public relations side, that is when you take it outside of the locker room and you factor in things like charity work, talk shows that help promote the company in a positive way. Or on the negative side, people that get arrested a whole bunch, or have substance abuse problems, or have been fired for saying racist things, or, there's been all sorts of crazy stuff in the world of wrestling. So we've judged some of these people very, very high, like a Cody Rhodes type, doing really well on the public relations side of it. We've had people very, very low, like the Alberto Del Rios, who have lots of issues that are constantly getting in the way of them scoring higher. And this is where we got to start getting into some of the negatives, because obviously the reason we're talking about this is because he was just fired from getting into a fight backstage where the head of the company said he feared for his life. Whether that's hyperbole or not, we don't know, but it's something you got to think about, because how often does it happen? Nails win after Vince. I don't know, too many instances of somebody attacking the owner of the company in one way or another.
He glossed over the obvious and went for Nails. He skipped over Brett punching Brett in 97.
Brett is one of the ones, but Brett, it seems from the stories that he was like, yeah, go ahead and punch me, I'm okay with you doing that, rather than like, whoa, what the hell is this guy doing, we still don't know what's true and what's not about this thing, so we do have to keep that in mind, that one source reports that monitors fell on Tony Khan, another one says that that's completely ridiculous and it didn't happen, and then another source says it's kind of somewhere in the middle of that.
Google Pixel 9a is built to withstand spills, pests, and drops. So the only thing to worry about is taking in all that beauty. Google Pixel 9a, durable by design.
And one way or another, he's gone from the company and other people aren't. And there have been 2 instances in the past year of a fight backstage. And that is after he had the situation with the lawsuit with WWE. And his arguably top point in his career was the controversy over, I'm going to complain about the people that I'm working with, and I want to leave. Controversy is CM Punk. That might as well be what the C stands for. And at his highest, it probably would have been either right before the pipe bomb, before everybody knew the way that things were going on, or maybe we would have given him higher scores when he came back to AEW, and he was very much like, man, I can't wait to work here. This place seems great. I want to be a mentor to a guy like Darby Allin.
I want to work with Jungle Boy and the Young Bucks.
If you got a problem with Jungle Boy, you're the problem. Yeah, praising the Young Bucks. And then, you fast forward a couple months and you got Hangman Page being like, I have to save the company from you. And then you've got, Nick Hausman around the WrestleMania tour had asked Seth Rollins, oh, you're interested in CM Punk coming back? And he was like, no, Phil, stay away, you cancer and all. Look, he's not getting 10s, is what I'm going to say here. We can sway one way or another, of course. I currently have him at a 3 for backstage and a 5 for public relations.
I also have him at a 3 and a 5.
Yeah, I'll go 3 or 5 as well.
Oh, look at that. That's the first one we have exactly the same scores on all around.
Well, because, look, regardless of the he said, she said, the man, Tony Khan went on television and said he feared for his life. There was a whole fight backstage last year where someone had their arm bitten.
Somebody got bit and the dog wasn't involved. Let's put it that way.
There was Good Boy Larry and then there was Ace the Spider. Yeah, I give him a 3 for backstage. And it sucks, too, because clearly a lot of people that like him, it's just like there seems to be this real confrontational element to things. And I give him a 3 because he's let go from the company solely because of his backstage behavior. 5 for public relations because while CM Punk is a bit of a prick, he's also the first to stand up for trans rights and LGBT, the entire community, and he'll wear a shirt in Texas that says, get your own, and then you can tell him what to do with the uterus on it because he's, fighting against the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Like, he's clearly, there's a good person in there. It's the good person that doesn't mesh well with other people.
It's a very good example of how you can agree with somebody in a lot of ways, and then there's some issue that just makes you on the opposite side. Because there's even like the things that he's talked about in pro wrestling are like, you can kind of agree with some of that. Like when he cut that pipe bomb and he was talking about like all these issues in the WWE, and people were like, hell yeah, man, these things suck. And then when you go back nowadays and you watch like a Triple H promo where he's like, oh, you aren't really interested in changing the business. You only want CM Punk on top. And if it's not you that it changes for, you don't want that change and you'll be a martyr otherwise. And you're like, damn, Triple H kind of right about that. And then, like,
yeah, I think ultimately, like, at least for me, that makes stuff all the more fun, right? That, like, there is truth to all of it, and it makes those promos more fun to go back and watch. But I definitely get the idea of, yeah, there, you know, I think you've said it a couple times. If everybody you meet is an asshole, maybe it's time to look in the mirror kind of thing.
Mm-hmm, yeah, everybody that you meet is an asshole, then you have to consider yourself the asshole for sure. And there are a lot of people that are pro CM Punk in the world of pro wrestling that are like, you know, the boys in the back and all, and not just, you know, the people who he punched a clock on when we were talking about the previous the physique side of it. But like, there are a lot of people that really fucking hate this guy, and not a matter of just, well, we don't quite get along, but we can settle aside our differences. Like, they do not like him. And again, we're not backstage, so we don't know. But when you see reports that say, is WWE interested in CM Punk, and then a lot of the narrative tends to be, well, we asked, and we were immediately met with, lots of people do not want him to come here. You know, that speaks volumes. You don't hear people talking about that for, I don't know, say, even Brock. You know, somebody who you would think would have some kind of controversy over him, and most people are like, yeah, Brock's not a people person, but we get along.
Yeah, maybe like that part-time schedule thing where you just show up to your thing and disappear. Kind of works for some people.
I decided on the back of your conversation to actually upgrade his backstage before. Because yeah, you do have to accept the fact that there are a load of people behind the scenes that consider Punk a locker room leader, let alone just a guy that's cool to be around. I think there's a lot of people in WWE as well that thought that about him as well, because he was standing up against the status quo of WWE, which is terrible if you are like, running things behind the scenes. But it probably is very good motivation for people that are lower down the card that a guy like him sees something in and wants to get behind that guy. So in some ways that disruption is good, because without that kind of disruption, there are certain people that you always, well, we as fans look at and think, oh, I really hope that guy eventually gets a shot at something, and they never do, because they're not going to be one to stand up for themselves. They're not one of those people that rocks the boat. Whereas Punk will gladly rock the boat, and as well, as Triple H pointed out, a lot of the time he's rocking the boat for himself, but he also wants to rock the boat for other people as well. And his time in AEW is very tumultuous, to say the least, in regards to the people that liked him seem to really like him and really respect him, and like go to bat for him. The ones that didn't like him thought he was killing the company from within. So it's like, it's so many different. So it's like he's on two ends of the spectrum all the time. There's very little middle ground with him. You know, people that have probably a middle perspective, people that don't actually associate with him that much in the company. But like, you know, passed him in the hallway occasionally and stuff like that. Other than that, never actually spoke to him that much. And then they probably say like, don't really have much to say about him. And everyone say like, oh, I love Phil. He really gets this my perspective on wrestling, and he's a cool guy. And he's giving me a lot of advice. And the other one say like, I hate him. I want him out of this company. Like all that other stuff. I mean, the whole stuff with Colt Cabana is a big thing. I don't know whether that really fits under backstage or PR, but it's exposed because it's like obviously affects his relationship with people behind the scenes, because Colt is someone who's very, very well liked behind the scenes, and if he's got an issue with him, then people inevitably have an issue with Punk as well, especially in how acrimonious circumstances there. The breakdown of their relationship was. You have like the Pipe Bomb podcast that he dropped, which pretty much severed his ties with WWE for a little while at the very least, and yeah, brought up a load of stuff, which is like, you know, in parts was bad on the company for what they did, but also in retrospect it's painted Punk in a bit of a bad light as well. Yeah, all the stuff that he would go out and willingly say on like media, like press, like junkets and stuff like that for AEW, where the famous Brawl Out thing where he just basically buried Colt Cabana and buried Hangman Page and MJF and the whole elite for stooging him out apparently, and that all leading to the incident, and then all the way up to what happened at Wembley Stadium a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, I think he's someone who's I think often in the right place. I think that he has a vision of wrestling that I personally very much like, and I'm sad that it's gone, because I think his approach to it has a lot of upside to it, and it's a different form of it. It was one of the things that not only his just presence on Collision was important, it was more just a case of the way that he viewed Collision was a good way of distinguishing it from Dynamite without it being like completely off the rails. So yeah, I'm going to miss that insight and perspective, because clearly he has a strong mind for the business, but he clearly isn't a fan of compromise.
Yeah, that's a big factor in there, because there are people that don't like somebody like Bryan Danielson. You know, he and The Miz, that's a good example right there. Bryan Danielson and The Miz do not like each other. But the two of them, if they are ever asked about each other, it's always like, yeah, we don't get along. In fact, we might even hate each other. But we've done business together with each other time and time again. We bring out the best in each other, and I respect the other guy. And they don't get into, like, shouting matches where you threaten to, you know, choke the other person out, or you actually go ahead and do it. I think if Punk, of course, I can't psychoanalyze the person, you know, too much, whatever, but I get the impression that if Punk could sort out whatever anger issues that get in the way that blind him from a compromise, he would have far less enemies. And people would just look at him as a passionate guy who maybe they aren't going to get a beer with on a regular basis, but that they can work with him really well, and they can find a way to find the same path. And then you got an issue like the Jungle Boy thing, and we've talked before about how like all three of us think that the Jungle Boy thing is at least in part Jungle Boy's problem too. But instead of being a locker room leader and approaching that situation in a better way that's conducive to like finding a means for Jungle Boy to agree and to not, you know, do anything stupid or whatever, it ends up being, I'm gonna fight you. That's not great. Now the public relations side of it, the vibes to me are on par with some of the other people that I'm going to bump up the backstage for, because what you're talking about, like, there are people that are very much on his side. So, you know,
I also bumped up the backstage.
He's polarizing, but he does have a lot more negatives overall than positives. So that's why I'm going lower than the middle of the road thing. But the vibes on the public relations, he's not somebody who has gotten arrested for domestic abuse or something. So I can't go like, you know, he's a 1 or something. But he creates controversy that reflects poorly on the company. The All Out stuff from last year made AEW look so bad, and it's made Tony Khan look bad ever since then. If that interview didn't happen, and the whole controversy over Punk was his injuries and the Page said something that upset him and it was having a backstage thing or whatever, we wouldn't really know any more of that. But if that press conference just doesn't happen, and the backstage fight afterward or whatever, AEW does not spend an entire year plus trying to justify that they can keep a tighter ship. So that really hurt the company's perspective he being Tony Khan, is just playing around with his action figures, and he just wants to be one of the boys, so he's never going to actually do anything that's going to make them upset. And then, of course, now he actually did fire Punk, but even that then gets criticism from people being like, oh, you're going to get rid of the guy who's got the best ratings, the best merchandise. It's like, it's a no-win situation, and it's all revolving around Punk. I can't imagine giving him a 6, or like the higher scores. But we do have popularity and credibility as well to round this out. The crowd reaction side of it, you can't deny Punk is popular, and that is a huge factor for just like the cheers and the boos and all that, the ratings. We don't know exactly how the ratings are going to reflect having him not on Collision, but at least for this week, there's been a drop-off. So if the drop-off continues next week, then we know that a good portion of that's probably people don't want to tune in unless CM Punk is going to be in there. The credibility side of it is more on the kayfabe judgment of whether they are a main eventer, a legend, or a jobber. You know, can they go out there and win a world title and you can buy into it and not think that it's a fluke, or are they the type of person who only ever shows up on television because they're going to get their ass kicked and they need to get an entrance? You know, judge the difference between a Roman Reigns in the company for WWE right now versus the way that they use Kira Tozawa. Or, you know, if we go into the AEW side of things, Serpentico is not getting the highest credibility score compared to, say, Kenny Omega. You know?
When you've got multiple parts but need just one answer,
Wait, how does these things work together?
looks like you can just ask Google.
It's the biggest deal in breakfast. 2 wake-up wraps and a hot or iced coffee. It's Dunkin's $5 meal deal.
I went with an 8 for popularity and a 7 for credibility. Like we swayed one way or another.
So, after this conversation that we had, I bumped him up on several categories throughout this entire discussion. But given everything that we've said, I had to bump his popularity up to a 10. This is one of the... It's weird because he's a 10 in the sense that he's a modern 10 in the wrestling is its own niche, and some people happen to know CM Punk outside of it as well. But I mean, when you just look at how insane this man breathes, and it becomes like, well, what did that breath mean? We're not going to analyze his breathing pattern. What does he say? You know, like, CM Punk is an insanely popular individual, and he's well-liked by many, he's hated by many, but even that in its own way is like a 10 on the popularity scale because he evokes such strong emotions on either end. So I've given him a 10 for popularity. For credibility, I've given him a 9. Because at the end of the day, it's funny because he said this 12 years ago as part of the original Pipe Bomb, where he said that he grabbed so many brass rings. People forget, before the Pipe Bomb, he was already like a 3-time world champion. He'd already worked Hunter, Shawn, Taker, you know, the Hardy Edge, or like he'd already been in that level, and then the absence of those stars and the Pipe Bomb catapulted into the next level to where he was like the number 2 credible guy on the full-time roster right behind Gone. And then you go to AEW, and he brought a level of credibility to that company where they sold out the United Center on a rumor. A very poorly kept rumor, but they sold out the United Center on a rumor that he was going to be there. They got to Wembley. I'm not saying it was entirely Punk, but I think a good chunk of it was. You know, they advanced greatly because of him. I've got to give him a 9. You plop him in the Royal Rumble in January, and he instantly becomes a favorite to go to WrestleMania and beat Roman Reigns. I'm not saying it's what he's going to do, but I'm saying that, like, you plop him back in AEW today, he's the real world champion. You know, Impact should at least have their roster to pay the money to get, you know what I mean? Like, he is that guy. He is. And it's, if you don't get it, it's largely because of a generational gap. But when you see what he draws, it's insane. I give him a 10 out of 9.
Yeah, I mean, I originally had him as 2 9s, but I think Rob's right. I think from a modern perspective, there is nobody that is I'd argue outside John Cena, there's anybody that's a bigger name in professional wrestling today than CM Punk. And that stems from him being like a big star in WWE and never really presented as the biggest star even when he was WWE champion for over 400 days. He was never represented to be the biggest star in the company because Cena was actively working at that point in time. He still had guys like The Undertaker and Triple H showing up. But then he leaves, and essentially every WWE show for the next 6 years or so is pretty much peppered with a large amount of CM Punk chants. Like, he's almost more famous when he's no longer wrestling in a lot of wrestling fans' eyes than when he was wrestling. Like, they hijacked the show because of him being around and them constantly having to quell it. That probably would have not happened if WWE was any good during the years that CM Punk was away from the company, but that's just the situation he was in. And then he comes back, and as Rob says, there's very few people that just on their name alone can sell out large stadiums and arenas. And again, Wembley wasn't sold out on Punk alone, but he's a big part of that. And yeah, I think he was a huge needle mover for AEW. I mean, we talked about before we got on, that's on that Collision show where he was fired prior to it. When Tony Khan announced they can fight him start the show, they dropped nearly 100,000 viewers. And it's like, you look at that and you feel the impact of, okay, that's a guy that actually, in a world of wrestling where there are very, very few needle movers nowadays, obviously Cena is bad, but he's just very much, very, very part-time at this point. But you look at Roman, Sasha before she left the company, that's actually got fired, she left the company, MJF. There's only like a handful of people that really, when they come on, people tune in, and then when they're off the screen, they leave in their droves. And Punk was one of those guys. And yeah, so from a modern context, I think he's a very solid 10. Like, obviously, he's not a 10 like Austin was a 10, but it's a different time in wrestling. And for the current time in wrestling, he is a 10.
You convinced me to bump him up to a 9. I'm not quite going to 10.
and then my credibility, like I say, multiple-time world champions in multiple different promotions, two-time AEW champion, multiple-time WWE champion, held it for the longest time in the modern era until Roman Reigns came along. Never main event at WrestleMania, but he did appear on, did open the main card for the biggest wrestling show ever in terms of attendance. Yeah, I think that he always strikes me as a guy that, yeah, when you put him on any promotion now moving forward, if he ever does return to wrestling, he's like the biggest star there, outside maybe a couple of sections in WWE. But yeah, I think his credibility is one of the highest there is right now, again, from what perspective.
So now let's crunch those numbers. And remember, this is out of a 100, if you could possibly score 10 across the board and get a perfect score, which nobody is ever going to get. But my total comes out to, now with some adjustments, 75.
After some pretty heavy adjustment, I give him an 80.
Yeah, same. It was like, I think we started on this and he was on like the low 70s, mid 70s, and now he's up to 80. Because, yeah, despite all that backstage drama, Punk is kind of a one-of-a-kind wrestler.
And that mathematically makes our average 78.33, which puts him